Welcome to FHWA's EDC4 session on partnering and e-construction, a vision for the future. My name is Tom Zagorski. I'm with Michael Baker International. I'm part of the consultant team facilitating this for you today, and I hope you enjoy the session. Under EDC3, significant emphasis was put on utilizing e-construction technologies across the country to effectively connect on-site personnel with people across the country. With the growing reception of e-construction technologies, the transfer and use of electronic documentation in construction has been successfully demonstrated across the nation. E-construction has become contagious. If you haven't caught the bug, hopefully you'll become infected after you hear today's speakers. EDC4 will continue to provide the motivation for stakeholders like yourself on your venture for e-construction, however, with an emphasis on construction partnering and understanding the synergies between the two and how each complement each other. Together, they promote recognition of mutual beneficial goals and achievements. It promotes open and transparent communication, and it facilitates issue resolution like we've never seen it before. These technologies and modern methods certainly enhance the partnering experience among a new generation of stakeholders. Before I introduce the speakers, I'd like to draw your attention to the workbook in front of you. The workbook has the session agenda in there. It has active note-taking that is, goes along with the presentations. It also has a QR code that you'll be able to download the presentations at a future date here. And also I want to draw your attention to a maturity matrix in the workbook and a loose piece of paper in that workbook where I would like, if you are the appropriate e-construction person, to try to fill out and leave behind for us. It would help us understand where you are in your e-construction and partnering journey. So I'd appreciate that if you just leave that at the table, or if you want to fill it out later, drop it at the registration desk or find one of us at the session here. So I'd greatly appreciate you filling that out. Okay, so I'd like to introduce our speakers. First up from FHWA, we'll have Bernie Kuda, who currently serves as FHWA's Resource Center Construction and Contract Administration Team Leader. His experience, in addition to being part of the FHWA e-construction team, includes advising on specifications, development and refinement, payment material quality assurance, and project inspection. Second up, we're going to have Rachel Falsetti, who has been with Caltrans for 30 years, serving in various management positions. She has held positions in finance, design, construction, traffic operations, local administration, and planning during her career. She's currently the Caltrans Division Chief of Construction. Ms. Falsetti's responsibilities includes administration of alternate dispute resolution process that's comprised of partnering program and dispute resolution board program. In addition, she chairs the Caltrans Construction Partnering Steering Committee, and she's also on the board of advisories for the International Partnering Institution. Last up, we have Janet Treadwell, is a 15-year veteran of the Ohio Department of Transportation, working in the areas of highway maintenance, public information, and the last 10 years in construction. She has overseen the implementation of multiple construction management systems, from document management to overall project administration and management systems. Currently, she is the data systems manager for department's use of the current construction project management system site manager. She is an AASHTO project task force member, overseeing the development of new software enhancements and maintenance of the software product suite of products, AASHTO project suite of products. She also leads ODOT's e-construction initiative. Our speakers will be sharing their experience about their e-construction journey and their partnering policies and procedures. Rachel and Janet have many years of experience with e-construction and will describe their state of the union with regard to partnering. Bernie will share FHWA's perspective on these two subjects and why we're incorporating partnering into the e-construction initiative. We'll have the opportunity after Janet finishes her presentations to ask questions and answers. This is your opportunity to ask anything of the three speakers. We have about 5-10 minutes for that part of the session. I'll speak briefly about the maturity matrix again, and then last but not least, we're going to save about 10-15 minutes for the roundtable discussion at the end. And this is a point where we're going to solicit ideas and input from you, both on what we're doing in EDC3, the initiatives that we adopted and you may have experienced or want to experience or continue experiencing, and certainly what we can do in terms of ideas that we can put in as a result of the EDC4 implementation plan that we'll be publishing probably in the middle of the first quarter of next year. So with that, I'd like to turn the podium over to Bernie Kuda.
Thank you, Tom. How many of you have ever written an email discussing a project, construction project? Congratulations, you've done e-construction. Now let's take you to the next step, right? So we start with something like that, and that's the start of e-construction. So we know everybody's done something electronically, but what can you do? What should we be doing? On the left, you see a project engineer's stack of paper that they would have to have in their car or in their truck if they were inspecting 1 or 2 or maybe 3 projects. That includes standard specs, and includes all the plans and specs for each project and anything that might be changing throughout the time period. On the right, you see the project engineer talking to a contractor with everything they have on a full-blown e-construction project. They use a tablet. Big difference. Makes it much more efficient when you're using that because you can actually access data real time. And that's what we're really talking about with e-construction. We have an implementation plan from EDC3 that's now 2 years old that said, here's how we want to move forward with getting everyone across the country knowledgeable about e-construction. Well, that's 2 years old. Now we're working on EDC4. What's next? And that's why we've got you here to provide your feedback to what we should be doing to lead you or help you and your states get to that next step that you want to get to. We, in that implementation plan, and we have done it, we've completed 15 on-site peer exchanges and 3 virtual peer exchanges, where it was a one-on-one or a state-to-state exchange. On-site, meaning we had 1 or 2 people from one state travel to another state and discuss what and how they've implemented or are implementing e-construction. The virtual peer exchanges were the same thing, it's just we did it electronically with the Skype or with some web meeting type thing. We've had regional workshops where we sponsored groups of states coming together to discuss things. So it's not a peer exchange, but it's really telling something similar to this summit that you're here now, but it's more focused specifically for e-construction. And so we have those opportunities. And we did that because that was what was asked for, to share the information of how things are being done. Federal Highways has even gotten involved with these regional and peer exchanges, but specifically Federal Highways is now piloting some use of e-tablets and like Surface Pros in the division office to be able to interchange and exchange information with the state DOTs. So approvals are going through back and forth on these Work Surface Pros. So we're trying to keep up with the states and be able to use the electronic materials such as that. And ultimately, with our EDC3 effort, we have created a website. You have a list of resources. I think it's towards the last pages in your workbook of some of these websites and some of these specific activities. But we created this website as a depository for all the information that we've collected over the years. All of the summaries of the workshops and peer exchanges are on that website. So if you go there, it's there. There's information. We just haven't compiled it into one single document. It's on the website for you. We do know that one size does not fit all states. Each state is unique. Each local agency within those states is unique. So how does e-construction fit to those? It has to go through, we suggest you go through a process to define what you need and what you're going to do. So one size of e-construction doesn't fit all. So you'll see two examples today of what they've done in California and in Ohio, but that's not exactly what you will do in your own state if you choose to do this. The integration and use of legacy systems. Every state has some sort of legacy systems you've been using that is electronic data. How does that fit into the processes of what you're doing and want to do? That has to be decided or has to be determined. And then, to integrate it, you have to understand what's in the old system and what's in the new system. So that's where we provide a little bit of guidance, a little bit of assistance in getting to that point and making those decisions. We have found that management doesn't always buy in, but it is needed. And I'm saying management at the very highest level of your state or of your local agency. So if they buy in and they are helping to push it, it will speed up the process. And so we'll give some tips on how that can happen and potentially using this return on investment. We have a NCHRP, I think, or as a TRB research project right now that is nearing completion that has developed a calculator for return on investment. Again, that's only going to be a guide of what would happen in your state, take some estimated numbers, but it'll give you a really strong estimate of what your return on investment could be when you go into e-construction. And that could give you an indication of what level of e-construction or electronic documentation you want to get to be able to get that investment return to where it really makes sense. So we're expecting that out sometime January, late February timeframe as a final or a draft to be able to use. So we're offering that. It'll obviously be stuck onto our website as well for downloading, for use in making decisions. With EDC4, we're looking to continue the successes we have had in EDC3. We didn't get to the complete implementation across the country. What we're realizing is that every state is at some level of e-construction. What we want to do is get you to go to that next step, or maybe the next 2 or 3 steps for the next several years. But what it comes down to is you need to know what those steps are, and we're here to help you determine and find out what those steps are. We're going to gather feedback today and for however long we need to see what we should be doing to help you. We're not trying to drive it down your throat or anything like that. We want to help you succeed with where you want to go. A lot of this will come with sharing perspectives. We've done it in the past with the peer exchange. We're doing it here with the 2 presentations about what other states are doing so that you have an idea, but it really comes back again, you have to make a decision as a state agency or a local agency of what is that ultimate picture for you. Or maybe it's an interim picture that leads to the ultimate that might be 10 years down the road. With this effort in the EDC4, we're also trying to determine what maturity means. Is full implementation in California the same as full implementation in Nevada? Probably not. Ideally, everybody gets to pure e-construction, but it's not likely going to happen that way. So what is the maturity level in your office or in your state? And that's what Tom suggested you fill out for an indication, your self-analysis of where you are within your state and where you could go over the next 2 or 3 years. We had a goal of 30 states being fully implemented or institutionalized in e-construction by now, by this time frame. So in 2014 we said we want to have 30. Well, we have self-reporting, and I believe that the number right now sits at about 15 to say that they're fully institutionalized. Come to find out, the more you get into e-construction, the more you realize not fully institutionalized, because it is a process that continues. You can continue adding things that you're going to be doing. So we're looking at that as, maybe it's not such a goal as just being fully instituted, but that goes back to what is the maturity level of where we're at. E-construction is ultimately a holistic approach of how you're administering a program. It ties back to your design, what's being done in design. It reaches out into what is needed in maintenance. But it's in construction, what do you need to do? Are you looking for approval process? Are you looking for electronic document storage? Are you looking for having ease of administration on a project? Those are all different things that have to be decided and have to be determined to be in the e-construction phase. We are talking data and not just documents. We can always say we have a paperless society or paperless project, but those papers have been computer generated, printed, signed, and then they're scanned back in, and our documentation is all paperless. Well, was that a paperless project? No. So when you say paperless, that does not mean just e-construction. And e-construction does not mean paperless. So it's a little terminology there. So we're talking data that is used, data that is analyzed, data that is transferred is what e-construction is about. We want to make sure that the local agencies and the industry are on board as well. Not just the state DOT doing their e-documentation or electronic contracting. But it should be, it will go out to your local agencies because the state process is generally will be used by local agencies. Some local agencies may be big enough that they're driving the state to get there sooner, or they're early implementers. But that's what we want to see. We want to see each group's pushing each other. The contractors, are they pulling information from you and they saying that we need to have quicker approvals, more efficient use of their time, of our time? So we need to get industry involved and have them part of the discussion about what e-construction is all about. The alternative delivery methods, whether it's the traditional design bid build versus CMGC or design build. They sometimes have different methods or different requirements of e-documentation. So it's not just a one-size-fits-all for the whole state program. It might be a one-size or multiple parts fit into the state program because we have different delivery methods. So we got to be considering those type of things when you're talking e-construction. And I already mentioned the return on investment, that we do have this coming out as an aid, but normally to get some of these programs in place or going forward, you have to have somebody who's making a decision. They will want to say, what's the return? How soon will we be paid back? How much will we save over time? A lot of the return on investment turns out to be savings of time and manpower that can then be reused or used someplace else, as opposed to calculating a number and saying, well, we put this much more money back into the program. Well, you're going to use that money anyway, so it's not really back into the program, it's just reallocated within the program a lot of times. Talked about e-construction already. What's partnering got to do with all of this? So partnering is really a way to build a mutual benefit for the contractors and the state or the owner agency at the same time. Well, e-construction will help do that. Partnering helps get e-construction moving forward. We want to achieve mutually beneficial goals. The contractors want to make a profit. We want to get the project done completed sooner, better, faster. And if we do partnering, everybody works together to get that done. Communication is a prime process within partnering. Guess what? It's also needed in e-construction. Oftentimes the communications are, when we do partnering on projects, the formal partnering, it lines out who's going to make the what decisions. Or if those decisions aren't being made, who's the next step? Well, guess what? In e-construction, you have to have those decisions as well to have the processes used properly, such as approvals of a change order. If the project engineer and the superintendent can't come to a situation closure quickly, it's moved up to the next level and so forward. Well, that mapping of that process can be used for e-construction as well, that the roles are then defined and it's not someplace where it goes stagnant because you can't come to a conclusion. With the two, you see there that there's an intersection of partnering and e-construction. We really want to improve efficiency on projects, pure and simple. That alone drives speeding up projects and getting quicker projects done for the public that we're out here to serve. Transparency is always an issue between the agency and the contractor, between the contractor and the agency. If somebody submits, or sometimes you might see issues on construction projects that the contractor says, well, I submitted that proposal for a change order to you 3 weeks ago. And the state says, well, we never saw it. Who's right? Well, e-construction and partnering both, because they have this intermixing, e-construction can say, well, we now have documentation that as of 10:30 a.m. on December 1st, you submitted that, we responded at 10:45, so it's back in the contractor's side. So we can actually track to the minute when things are submitted or acted upon. And those, because that's always out there that you can track that, there's a little bit more emphasis to get things done quicker and to get them done more efficiently. The renewed interest in partnering that we've seen, it will reduce claims. We'll have we have examples that we have provided that states have implemented partnering and claims have gone to near zero, or even actually to zero, because there is a better understanding of what each agency and contractor needs. The alternate delivery methods, again, they change the processes. So we need to change what we do within partnering. Partnering can help that. If you have, typically you have the designer as an agency person, and then you get a design build contract and that designer is now on the contractor side. How does that affect what you're doing with partnering? So we want to make sure everybody understands the mutually beneficial and mutually acted upon activities. Partnering came about in the transportation industry in the mid-90s, early 90s. A lot of times current practices are still based on what was happening then or what was written as specifications then. So there's people, we got millennials coming on board now that have no idea what happened in 1992 or 1993. That's when they were born. So we need to integrate millennials into our systems as well, not just rely on historical gray hairs of what has happened. So getting this renewed interest in partnering and making sure that we talk to each other and carry forward with and improve the processes is why partnering is part of this effort as well. The two of partnering and e-construction, I mentioned already a little bit, is that they really do meld a lot of the activities that, and that's why they're tied together so well. You could say that about other activities such as alternative contracting or anything like that and partnering, that everything is starting to become a big circle, that it's all influencing each other. Transparency. If we don't have transparency in the way we do business with each other, there's this mistrust that's built up. Partnering and e-construction can address that mistrust. They both need and use the identification of the teams on both sides of the table, because that's how decisions are being made. And once we know how and where decisions should be made, we can document it with e-construction. So that feeds right into that efficiency and accountability. Everybody knows who and what is supposed to be happening. And if we all know, then we can make, if you're in it, and it's their responsibility, we know it can be done. Again, back to that very bottom one there with the open and honest communication. If you can't hide behind partnering, and you can't hide behind something when you're working on e-construction, because it's all laid out. This is the way it should be working. And it comes together saying projects are better built, faster built, and more efficiently working throughout the program. So that's the federal highway perspective of what and why we're looking at this and doing this as the EDC4 effort. So I'm going to turn it over to Rachel, who will talk about what they've done in e-construction and how that's affected a little bit of partnering, I believe, a little here in California. So Rachel, I turn it over to you.
Thanks, Bernie. So see, I'm not always as good with technology, so we'll see if I go forward or backward with my slides. Usually I end up going backward initially. See, I was right. I went backward. Okay. Anyway, so I wanted to first give you a little bit of an understanding of the size of California and what our system is that we're dealing with. We have a really large system. I mean, we'd be similar to Texas or New York or Florida. 50,000 lane miles that we're responsible for, 12,500 bridges. You guys can read all the rest. But basically, from a construction standpoint, we're there to help make sure that those are maintained as construction projects come out. So as far as how we're set up in California, we have 12 districts, and in those 12 districts there are 9 construction deputies. A couple of them have regions, like the northern part of the state is a North Region deputy, and then in the central area there's a central region too. There's 1,700 district construction staff, so they deal with the roadway side, and 400 structure construction staff. They deal with bridges, culverts, things like that. Right now we have about 750 ongoing construction contracts. That's pretty par for the course that we've had for a number of years. The total amount or value of the contracts in construction right now is about $8.8 billion. The high was around $12 billion, and that was when we had that rather large structure that you guys might have heard about, the New Bay Bridge. And some of the other toll projects, but that was part of why we had such a large number before. But we're getting down to probably more a consistent number. So e-construction and partnering and the synergies, and I believe Bernie talked quite a bit about this, or a lot about this. We do really find that e-construction and partnering work well together. For us, e-construction and partnering both increase transparency. Obviously, we're talking back and forth between each other. We use our e-construction tools to be able to communicate better with the contractors. Now, what I will say is I'm going to be telling you where we are from an e-construction standpoint. So we're not quite fully developed, but we are seeing a lot of benefits. It's for the pilot projects and things that we're doing, and things are happening more efficiently and more transparently by using these tools. It does save time and resources and money, on both sides. From a partnering, if you're working together collaboratively, and that's the goal of partnering, it will save time, resources, and money. You get into less battles with each other. And the fact that we can pull up something on our tablet immediately and not have to run all the way back to the office and pull out all your plans, or go back to the back of your truck and pull out the plans, makes things more efficient. And also, like from a specification standpoint, we probably, like a lot of states, change our specifications over time. And so the people out in the field are challenged with, okay, I know that used to be here, where is it now? Well, with e-construction, it makes it so much easier because you just type in the word and it comes up with all the places. So it does make things a lot more efficient and saves time from that standpoint. And then basically all those things improve communication, both the partnering side and the e-construction side. So where are we with e-construction? So far from an e-construction standpoint, we have had for a long time, we will say we were an early adopter of technology. And that really was from the automated contractor pay system side. We've had that technology since the 70s. And oh, by the way, lucky us, we still have that same technology for our pay system. So we've got a COBOL program, I believe, that's been around for a while. Luckily, there are still people out there that know how to program COBOL, and we have hired them to help. We're hoping that we can change that coming up. We did actually go through a process to try to update that recently, where we were having a system built specifically for us. The unfortunate thing is we maybe were a little too early and we were trying to take on a little bit too much. So that system didn't quite happen, and we've kind of gone back and are starting to look at some new things. The other thing that we've done from an electronic standpoint is extra work billing system, so time and material billing system. And that's been really effective for us with change order work and things like that to be able to pay our contractors timely. And believe me, they like to be paid timely. I don't know if you guys all have that experience, they like timely payment, but they do. Another couple of the things we're doing from e-construction, intelligent compaction. I think a lot of the states are going on intelligent compaction. We recently added that to our specifications, and basically that's using vibratory rollers with an integrated management system based on GPS. Basically, it makes sure the rollers go across in a pattern so they're not going over one place 10 times, but they go over all of the places that it needs to. It also takes into account temperature. One of the good things from that is we actually were able to realize where one of our specifications maybe doesn't quite work the way we wanted it to, as far as we weren't really getting the temperatures we needed in certain areas. So we're re-looking at that, and we've been using that specification for a while. So I'm not sure we were getting exactly the product we needed, but intelligent compaction is helping us move forward and make sure that we will get the material we want. The other one we've been doing recently is inertial profile. Inertial profile's been around for a while. We've adopted it about 4 or 5 years ago. We did some pilot projects. I will say that our contractors are struggling with it a little bit. I know Nevada is going through the same, because we're hearing from our contractors. Anyway, it's inertial profile though is great. It goes out and looks at the profile of the road based on basically the suspension of your car, really. And it allows us to get a certain smoothness in the roadway. That is a huge benefit for us as far as helping with GHG reduction, greenhouse gas, because if you're not using as much gas because the pavement is smoother. And overall, I think everyone really wants smoother pavements too. So again, that's something we've done from the e-construction, and we are working through all the little hiccups with that. So those are all kind of in production. So as far as the pilots are concerned, the person in my staff, who's my innovation chief now, or so he put it on the, if you look at the thing, it said, the little roster, it says he's our innovation chief, and he is really doing all the innovation. He's been in charge of working on mobile device tablets and innovations and piloting that. What I will say about that is, when I took my current position, almost immediately my boss, who's sitting back there, Carla Sutliff, is our chief engineer, said she was fortunate enough to be back at an AASHTO event where the question was asked, how many of the states are currently using tablets in the field? And she said every single state raised their hand, and she was sitting there like, oh, we aren't. And you know, the reality is that's not quite true, because then we surveyed and that's not exactly the case. But you know, we live in California. It's kind of embarrassing when you live in California, which has, I think, Silicon Valley and all this high tech, and we're not using the technology. And we've got all of these, our design is all done electronically. Then we print all the plans out, and we print the specs, and we go to the field and do the work in the field, and then we go back and put it in electronic form. So she really charged me and my staff to come forward to look at what can we do from a mobile device tablet or mobile device side. And so we've been piloting a mobile device project, and John has been working on that for about the last year, and we're hoping to have a pilot project report out by beginning of next year. So then the other things that are also part of that he's looking at an electronic document retention and management system. I mean, that clearly makes sense as part of the tablet. So Bernie showed the pictures of in the field they've got all these binders, and then they can instead have just a tablet. So that's exactly what we're doing. We're looking at a system called ProjectWise. It's a Bentley project, and we're testing these things to see how well they'll work. Eventually, I'm not sure exactly the system we'll end up with, but we're just showing this is proof of concept that how invaluable they are, how much efficiency, how much they really help us, how sustainable these things are. The other thing they're looking at is electronic field daily reports, the diaries. And we've had a person internally who's put some together. We've looked at a couple on the outside, but really it's a great tool because not only does it help us collect the information more quickly, but we can use it for our labor compliance side too. Because right now our labor compliance people, they have to go get the diaries and manually look to make sure who is on the site, to make sure it meets with the payroll. With electronic, they can just electronically find the stuff. And search, it's much easier. The other thing we're working on is automated machine guidance. We've got a couple projects out there where we give 3D models to the contractors and they can use that for their automated machine guidance. We hope to go more production on that fairly soon. I'm thinking sometime within the next year or so. So what else is in development? One of the things that's in development is our electronic potential claim submittals, which I know the contractors will very much appreciate, being able to put in their claims in an electronic. We're pretty close to being able to do that. The other thing that helps us with is from our standpoint, we can look at things more from a programmatic level if we have these electronically. It also will have electronic signatures and things like that. It'll just make things a lot more efficient, transparent, and make things go more quickly. We, like a lot of states, are, and in fact, I know our next speaker, Janet, will probably be talking on this because I think she's on the committee. We're looking at some ASHTOware products. The one we're currently about to start looking at with Infotech is the ASHTOware Civil Rights and Labor Compliance piece. I'm really looking forward to that because, again, that will help us a lot with our labor compliance and ensuring labor compliance is done correctly from the contracting standpoint. ASHTOware Materials Management, that's another one we're also just beginning on. We right now are obviously doing everything paper, but we're going to be bringing in Infotech to look at the material management side and hopefully within the next 2 or 3 years be able to implement that. So the future products, part of what we've realized with the project that failed, we tried to take on too much. We were trying to do all of these modules all at once in one large system, and it just unfortunately didn't work. So now we're looking at commercial systems that are already out there, and we're looking at how we can do module by module at a time. So the next one we'd be looking at is the project construction, which includes the pay systems and things like that. We're really excited about working with our maintenance division in getting a geo-referenced asset inventory. So that's as you build a project, you can actually collect the asset data. Right now, they've got to manually input all that. Hopefully they get all that. But we're hoping at the end of construction, we can actually just give that to them, and then maintenance knows what gifts they've been given when we're finished constructing. We do give them a lot of gifts. At least that's what our maintenance deputy says. And then the other one that we're going to be embarking on, and I know our structures people have already started embarking on this a little bit, we want to fully get to 3D models at some point, and 3D models are so effective at being able to visualization. I mean, I think they really are the wave of the future. They'll really be great for the beginning side where you're going out and talking with the public about what something is going to look like, but it also helps us from a construction standpoint to see conflicts. And I don't know how many of you have been out in the field, but had the opportunity to, I know as a young engineer, I thought I could visualize things in my head, and things didn't quite turn out like they were supposed to. I think the barrier rail ended up being a little short. But I told the guy out there, the construction contractor guy that was the carpenter, that I knew I was right. Yeah, I was wrong. Anyway, a 3D model might have helped that. I think we maybe had to pay a little extra to fix it. Don't charge me back on that, Comey. So what about the partnering side for Caltrans? Caltrans has been partnering on projects for many years. The concept basically, we got into the partnering, the concept was basically introduced in the 80s. We got into it in the 90s, it was optional. And then around 2008, we started to put it mandatorily on contracts. And it's on contracts from 10 million and over 120 working days, I believe. Now, I might have that wrong. I think it's 100 working days. In any case, it's really, partnering is about a culture shift. It's really about working together in a fair, open, and honest way with the contractor. It's about teamwork. It's about, rather than being against, it's working with the other person. It really does allow for joint problem solving and rapid dispute resolution. And all of those things, I mean, clearly e-construction helps with every single one of those things, because you have the information right in front of you and you can have these really meaty, great dialogues with the contractors. So some of the best practices that we have from a partnering standpoint, and this would be true of e-construction also, we have an executive level engagement during the project itself and then at the program level. We've got champions all at our executive levels. Malcolm, our director, is very, very a proponent of both partnering and the electronic construction and innovation, and as is Kome. They really both feel that these are important programs within the department. We right now required on contracts that are greater than 10 million and 100 working days. We're actually looking at maybe changing that to something that says the complexity of the contract instead of the size and the number of working days. That might make a little more sense. We had a study that was recently done that's pointing to that. But right now, that's what we're doing. That ends up being about 20% of our contracts. So about 200 contracts total, you would say, that we have out right now have required partnering. We do informal partnering on the others, so it's kind of a choice. I just think partnering is a good practice. It's about being able to create a relationship with your contractor and having that open communication when you're solving things along the way. For the ones that require partnering, we have a professional facilitator, and that cost is actually split 50% from us and 50% from the contractor. And that way it's a non-biased, they're not siding with one or the other. They're paid by both. We have dispute resolution ladder. Again, and I will say the tablets really help with that, or once we get the tablets, they will very much help with that, because you can pull things up really quickly, but the dispute resolution ladder basically starts at the lower level and goes up between us and the contractor as far as figuring out disputes. And basically what the partnering does is allows us to identify challenge and risks and discuss the solutions in a more formal process, but more quickly. And then the tablets will help us do that in a more efficient manner. So what are the program level things that we look at as far as the key for partnering? We actually have a construction partnering steering committee where we meet quarterly, and that's with industry. All of our deputies in construction, along with 15 industry members, meet together, and they're higher level people within the construction industry. And we talk about what are the barriers to partnering. What are good practices in the field to help us? One of the recent ones we've been working on is how do we make our work zone safer? And of course that really does help with the whole partnering for everyone in the whole community in the field, industry, and the agency. We do make sure to recognize our teams with an award ceremony. That way people are really excited about this partnering. And then again, like I said, we have executive leadership that is very involved and champions this. So in closing, e-construction and partnering are really a big part of Caltrans and a very huge and important part of what we do in construction. I really am excited, and I've been happy to have the opportunity to take this and really champion going forward into we're in the 21st century now, right? So we're finally getting into the 21st century, I believe, and the two of them together are really synergistically going to work very well. So that is my presentation, and it looks like Janet is up next. So I will turn the...
So is it the one to the right?
It is the one to the right.
So I won't mess it up. Good morning, everybody. My name is Janet Treadway with Ohio Department of Transportation. Our ODOT overview that I was going to give, basically, we do also have 12 districts, serving 88 county offices. In 2015, ODOT sold 713 projects, right around $1.65 billion. Along with that, 27 million of emergency work projects were also sold. Our ODOT, or local participating agencies, sold 224 projects at $320.3 million. While all that was being done, we administered and approved 5,025 subcontracts, utilizing basically the same prime and subcontractors for all the projects sold, with a grand total right around $2 billion worth of work. With that, we had our construction staff at only 575 full-time, 219 part-time, and 125 consultant staff. Our path to e-construction contains our construction project administration, which we utilize the FHWA project suite to do, from estimating to award and through the entire project. We have a document storage and retention system, and currently we've identified our SharePoint system, which is SharePoint 2010. And then our inspection forms are currently in Excel, Word, or still paper, but we've been working on identifying those over the years, and I'll speak more about that in just a minute. And our mobile device deployment had started with the EDC3 initiative, and basically we have been able to take the tablets and the devices that we had worked with our IT department, and we found quickly on, because we purchased 77 Dell Venues, which is a Windows-based tablet. But those were the ones that our IT department said, these are secure, this is what you can use. That was identified with our field testing with our engineers, and they quickly found that while it worked with our engineers because they could basically use a keyboard attachment or a mouse or whatever, it's like a mini laptop with the additional functionality of being able to take videos or FaceTime or photos. But it really wasn't that tablet type of environment for our seasoned field inspectors to use, and it was too antiquated for them in the sense that they had to keep finding things. It was too small, you know, the glare that they were experiencing. So with our construction project administration, we do use FHWA Project Suite. We use FHWA pre-construction for preparing our proposals, our bid PS&E packages, and the bid letting. We use Infotech Bid Express for our online advertising and bidding, and we use FHWA Site Manager for construction administration and materials. And then our civil rights program is the FHWA Civil Rights and Labor for electronic payroll submittals, managing our DBE commitments, and our online bidder and quoter information. Okay. Basically, in 2010, we identified Site Manager as our system. We had a 20-year plus in-house database system that we had been using, and we went ahead and turned everybody over to the FHWA Site Manager system at 3.9b. That gave us additional functionality because our current system, or previous system, was very antiquated. There was functionality issues, there was access issues. Right along with Site Manager, we were able to create a virtual desktop in 2015 that basically worked with our IT department so that our contractors and our consultants can now access Site Manager directly. In doing so, we've given our contractors the ability to approve change orders from their location. And we have everything recorded within one data source so that when we print out, actually not print out anymore, but when we use a PDF form of the change order, they're able to get it from an online report portal themselves. We don't have to transfer the document back and forth anymore, and they can see the status of it going through on a report, so they know if it's our responsibility to make an approval or theirs at that point in time. Okay. It's not transferring over here for you guys, the same as it is for me. I'm actually a couple slides ahead of you on the computer. It's stuck. Sorry. Okay. Yeah, because I was using these two. The document storage and retention, we had identified using SharePoint, as I said, in 2010, or 2010 version of it. It's basically given us projects, a delivery, to have each one have a current site for themselves. With that, we set up an external site for the contractors. That way we're able to collaborate with them, utilize documents back and forth, either SharePoints or change orders, their SharePoint sites, their information on an RFI submittal. Everything is back and forth with alerts being set up. So we know if they put something in their system, it sends us an email directly. If we put something in, thank you, then it sends them an alert directly. Also, by doing this with our design builds, we've been able to set up this project-specific sites so that all the stakeholders have access to their SharePoint project site. We've been able to collaborate on photos and send information back and forth, obviously, but have that one source record with working with all of the documents. One of the things we've identified with not only going paperless with our change orders, but was the fact that we had duplicity and redundancy all across the board. Our finance department had always required a wet signature, or that actual change order be sent to them. So we had districts that were basically sending it out to a contractor in multiple copies, one so that the contractor could keep it, and then we would keep one and we would send it on. In doing so, you had multiple versions of an original change order. And our finance department would then unbind, scan, and keep that change order themselves. So in this, we have identified SharePoint as the source. Everyone knows that they can go to that one location, be it the contractor or our finance department, and they would get the information. This, for them, has also reduced their staff by about 8 hours a week in doing everything I was saying before. So they've actually seen savings in it as well. When it comes to our inspection forms, we had basically started in 2009 identifying that we had forms out there and every district was doing it their own way. Everybody had something that was special to them. They had made either small or significant changes, but not communicated that out to everyone statewide. So we would have contractors basically saying, well, this district wants this way, this district wants this way, and we needed to come together with one ODOT concept. So we looked at our forms, we brought everybody in. We brought our district staff, our field users, people out in the field, and decided on a set of forms that we would use. In doing so, we came up with a best practice. We included some formulas that they had found and basically published those last year. But we knew we weren't done. So over the last year, we've been researching with about 3 different companies on taking those forms and making them digital. We're actually going to complete our contract with a company called GoForms this month. And basically what they've done is taken our forms from Excel or Word, made them into digital format, so that every field that is completed is now data that we can research on. And we can take that and analyze and give statistics out. But we can also do a quick search on where every item was placed. You know, technically on a construction project, when they're in their paper form, I might know this item was placed, but not the exact location on the roadway. This will give us that information because the form itself will be able to take a photo, you'll be able to mock up or write up on that photo, but you're able to store the photo within the form itself, and then it becomes metadata in the actual system that we'll be able to research going forward. So like I said with our mobile device deployment, we did start out with a Dell venue. It worked well, but not well enough. We had utilized the remaining of our EDC funds in order to purchase LG G-Pads through our Verizon contract. That gave us a tablet that had connectivity through a data plan and Wi-Fi compatible. They were able to use apps that they had been using. One of the things that we had found out early on when we gave out the Dell venues, which was a lucky surprise for us, I guess, was that our inspectors were already starting to use their own personal devices, their phones or tablets from home, because they wanted a way to improve on what they were doing. They knew it could do Excel. They knew it could do formulas. They knew that they could have an app, that would basically walk and give them a location and then could find the area for them. but they didn't have it on something we had provided. So in doing so, with the LGG pad, we were able to come up with a construction build. We worked with our IT department this time and basically said, these are the apps we need. If we get a new device, this is our build, this is what our inspectors want and would actually use. It's been able to give them something that they're able to talk to text, they're able to find an area, they're able to do formulas, they're able to take photos. One of the other things that we found when using the mobile device deployment was that we also came up with an app that talks directly with our FHWA system. It's through the FHWA sync service, and the app is called Mobile Inspector. This does your daily work report electronically, and when it does, it'll work online or offline. It will do everything from identifying the contract field personnel to the equipment being used to the work item place location. Like I said, the talk-to-text functionality has been wonderful for us. We're seeing our inspectors give us a lot more detail about that item placed than they were when they were even writing pencil and paper. So we're getting that information, and it's back in our site manager system, so we're able to do more research on it. So we're able to see more of what the contractor is doing. The contractors liked it, or the consultant world has liked it, for the fact that they can work offline. And then they can go ahead and they can keep working, and then basically use whatever device they're using as well, and then sync it back to our system. With partnering and e-construction, a majority of the local participating agencies in Ohio still use paper. So you've got all of that field documentation back at a field office. We don't have our oversight that we do with our district construction monitors, and the ability to see such processes with them using Site Manager now for free has given them that added insight. We're able to see or assist with material acceptance, change or contract modifications, estimate approvals, and looking at what we were able to do with them. But it's also helping them to provide a formal tracking system for their materials where they didn't have that before. A lot of it, we would see that they were using everything in Excel and then sending that to us. It also gives them the ability to use our electronic portal system or our report system that gives them immediate feedback. Once you hit enter, there's a report for it. And it's given them the daily work reports, their basic project information, their change order information as well. So that's helping our locals achieve the same thing we are, and then the contractors are experiencing the same aspect and reports that they would go and look for on an ODOT project with a local system as well. Our path to e-construction with partnering actually began in the 90s, as everybody was talking about, with our director. Director Ray had been the director back in the 1990s, and he is back again now, where we had seen that web and flow between the the deputy directors succeeding him. We now have placed a permanent steering committee so that we don't have that when a director leaves, that there's all these changes and everything is not expected anymore. What they've done is they've also created a steering committee. It does have ODOT and contractors on there, which has a recognized award program and the training programs that we have established. One of the things is that it is a requirement on every ODOT project. We just have a different level depending upon the size of the job sold. ODOT does have approved lists of facilitators that everybody agrees upon while they're going through their partnering system, and then they do meet every 3 to 6 months as well. Oops, sorry. While we were doing the partnering and the e-construction for our 3D and 4D models, during our ED3 project, we met with the industry to start identifying a knowledge base and a spec requirement, which took place in December of 2014. We did complete our model in late of February 2015, and then our specs were completed in April. When it went to advertisement, we had a few companies that were our contractors that were working with our consultants to try to identify that, and it went out in May of 2015, and it was sold in July of that last year. It was also one of those, it was a 4.5 mile lane in our interstate downtown Columbus. The 3D model provided the land XML files. One of the things that was new for us was how to identify what would be contractual. And looking at the roadway profile grades and elevations, the pavement grade, slopes, and surface elevations, and what would we be taking back from them. We did identify that with the 4D model, it was required to provide one or more of the virtual models, that was not something that the industry had at that time. In going forward, I'm afraid to use my comments at this time, in looking at what we would have available to us. So we've basically been working with our 3D models and continue to do that again this season. Where we are with our future, with our construction project administration, we are going to the FHWA base of web-based system, so it's project 3.01. It will take all of the projects that we currently have now and make them web-based so that everyone can utilize them. And looking at it with our contractors and partnering with them and our locals, they'll be able to use the system even more based on either at the field office, their office, or out in the field itself. And we'll be able to use all of our web apps. It also includes an application for our CRL system, which is a wage interviewer app. Our document retention system, we are going with ProjectWise in the near future. One of the things we had identified was that while we did a pilot with them last year, it did not work on an Android device. But ODOT has maintained basically an agnostic platform, being that we found that users would be more comfortable if they were using an Android or an iPhone or Windows-based. And when we tried to give them something that they weren't familiar with, they would tell us 10 things that were wrong with it before they would identify something that it could do for them. So ProjectWise is able to work on all of those systems as of this time, and we looked at it basically as a cradle-to-grave type storage system that we can use enterprise-wide and turn over to our maintenance partners. Our inspection forms, as I said, we are going to go with Go forms. And managing our mobile devices, our own district offices are starting to purchase more and more of the devices themselves. We're actually going to go with a Samsung Tab E, and the fact that it looks like this next season, every inspector that has, our senior level inspector will be outfitted with a device of some sort based on what they want to have so that we can utilize everything as far as paper. We've had one district go so far as to say that they will be paperless next season. We continue to build on our 3D and 4D modeling, as I stated a minute ago, and we look at a project yet this year to be sold. With our contractors, consultants, and LPAs, we wanted to basically take them into our partnering. So we meet with them on a regular basis, quarterly with all of our e-construction staff, and we bring in any mobile device user that they can come in and tell us what they're having issues with, how can we fix this, a new app that they've found, and we bring our consultants in as well when we're doing this. We're working with our contractors on our heavy highway every quarter to find out what they would find to be beneficial for all of us working forward. Okay.
Thank you, Janet and Rachel and Bernie. And are you seeing the synergies between e-construction and partnering? And partnering at different levels, partnering the traditional way we see it in terms of getting around the table and work out issues on a project, partnering with local agencies. Are there local agencies in the room? There's a few here. Did you hear the word free in Ohio? You know, they're going to give this stuff to you for free. Working with industry, partnering with industry, solving issues at a higher level that get driven down to the project level. So with that, I'd like to open up to questions for the group. We're being recorded, so please be patient for the microphone to get to you. Please state your name and the state you're from and ask your question, please. Yes, ma'am.
Leslie Boak with the Forest Service. I'm wondering how you get your IT department on board. They seem to be my biggest roadblock for everything.
So we work quite well with our IT department, and yet they've been a little bit of a challenge. However, what we've done is brought them out to the field and got them to understand what our challenges are, and when they came out to the field and started looking at what we were dealing with, they couldn't believe it, quite honestly. So they have really embraced it based on that standpoint. And I also have someone in my staff that's really a huge advocate for RT, and he really understands it very well, so he can talk to them in a language that I don't even understand. And obviously, I'm having a feeling that Janet knows how to speak that language too.
I did have to learn that language. I'll use this one, and that way we can pass it around. So one of the things that I do is I meet with our state IT team. We have a tactical meeting once a month, and I bring to them what we're seeing in construction and what our issues are. But like Caltrans and what Rachel said, one of the things I did was ask our administrator in IT to go out to the field, meet with some of our actual users, and see what they were experiencing. It was extremely eye-opening for him when we had him go out to projects that didn't have connectivity even, and what they were having to use. So they were working on creating hotspot points, using some of our Marks towers that we use for our state patrol, utilizing other systems that we have in order to give increased connectivity. But also, when we went through part of the pilot, we went ahead and gave them one of the devices and said, here, use this for a day or two. See what our inspectors are seeing. See how you can do your work, typical office work. Can you get it done? And when they had some issues they were finding, then they worked very quickly to find resolution for them, and it only helped our end user as well.
The other thing we've seen with EDC3 efforts is that a lot of states' IT departments say one device per person, one style of device. So you can't have an iPhone and a tablet. You got one or the other. And so that's been an issue in many states, that they're all not interconnected. They're all not the same. Sometimes you can take a picture. Sometimes you can take a picture and not be able to attach it. So that's an issue that you bring up, that things like that have to be addressed in the program. And obviously you're facing some of those as well.
Other questions over here on the left?
I'm Tom Ostrom with Caltrans, and I'm on the bridge design side of the fence. And I have a question really for all three speakers. They touched upon it, but the equivalent to this effort on the design, the bridge or the design side, is e-design. And what we're trying to do is go from a two-dimensional process to a three-dimensional process. In most states, and we're at the beginning of this in California, most states try to convert their 2D process to a 3D process. And we've talked to multinational companies and European transportation providers that pretty much tell us you can't be successful doing that. You need to basically throw out the 2D model and create a new business paradigm considering 3D tools. And so the question is, we heard lots of interesting things in the presentations about the advantages of e-construction, but what are you doing in the construction side to basically throw out the old way of administering contracts to take advantage of this technology?
So one of the things that we're working on, at least with the idea of 3D modeling and 4D modeling, is that we are taking a look of how we inspect our projects based not so much on a proposal line number or a pay item, but actually the item or the asset being placed. And the fact that with a 3D model, if I have that on a device that I could stand out, basically hit a locate me, and my inspector can then look and say, okay, I have this asset to inspect, and it tells you what requirements or what would make that conform, or a checklist for quality, and taking that and putting it directly within the plans. That's what we're actually working on, but it is a totally different mindset. But it's also one of those things where taking that information, how do you put it back in a system that you've always been 2D? You've always had the paper. So trying to basically converge the two has been, I would say, ODOT's biggest challenge right now.
It's interesting you bring up the 3D, 4D, 5D modeling, because it has to be a connection between the construction and the design. So I'm glad that you're seeing that, and everybody else needs to see that as well, that you can't do this just in one side. And the contractors can't just demand it because maybe the state's not able to do it, or local agency's not got that process in place. And you can't just say it's a spec, so go do it. That's where everybody has to communicate and make this more efficient. So I'm glad to see that design is concerned with construction, what's going to be used in construction, because construction is definitely concerned with what's coming out of design, and it has to have that.
It's really a data set that's incubated in the planning of the project and given to the asset manager at the end of the project to use as the basis for asset management in the future. So yeah, we have to all be in it together.
And the other thing, one thing I want to say is, when we go to this new processes that we might be looking at, we have to map what we're doing so that we can see those disconnects and see where it can be disconnected and still work, or not be disconnected and not work. And so that's a big part of what we're having to do, is you have to map the whole process and understand what you're doing with things like that.
Thank you, Bernie. Another question here in the back.
To add to the conversation taking place, we talk about 3D data. I'm sorry, my name is Alexa Mitchell from WSP Parsons Brinkerhoff in Phoenix, Arizona. And we're talking about digital data and mobile devices and being able to capture data from construction to asset management. So the next logical question is, are you using surveying instruments to collect geospatial data that is more meaningful than just a line? For example, are you equipping your inspectors with GNSS rovers to be able to collect the data as it's being inspected, measure the quantities, enter the information accurately in the diaries, and then pass on that information to asset management? Is that something that's been considered?
First, I'll say for Tom's question about the 3D, we're only starting on some of this stuff, so we're not quite there yet with the 3D modeling. I know John Hancock's been working with our design people a little bit, but we're not quite there. As far as the rover side, no, we have not equipped our staff yet with rovers. We are looking at some rover-related stuff for the AMG, automated machine guidance, but we're just barely starting down some of those paths. And you know, I'm really most interested in at least initially getting tablets out to the field. I mean, we're pretty far behind in some cases. Clearly, very far behind. I think where Ohio is. It sounds like.
And one of the things that we did identify, actually in a meeting earlier this week, was that in order for this to be productive for everyone going forward, you not only have to start really identifying your data governance and making sure everyone's using the same information when they're capturing it, along with the location. So we were working with our CAD and mapping and design team. We're making sure that we have the locations identified while we're making these plan sets and going forward, so that when they're out there with whatever device they have, be it an iPad, which can get a little bit closer down to like a foot, and then certain additional pieces can be added to other types of electronic devices to get you even closer depending upon what type you're using, so that we make sure that we capture that while they're out there doing their inspection, getting the photos, or just that log point on the map. So we're trying to get all of the team, including our asset management team, involved from the start.
And I'd actually defer to Tom with a little bit of experience on that, with what other states might be doing other than just California and Ohio. Do you have any?
Certainly, Bernie. Through our peer exchange program that we're facilitating with FHWA, where we're getting together states to talk about e-construction. One state that comes to mind is West Virginia, a leading state in using survey technology in the field and tying it into their mobile devices for as-built and checking along the way. So one more question here, and then we'll move on. Any? Lexmi?
Hi, so I'm with Colorado DOT, and I had a question about, so our contractors weren't the biggest fan of CRL and mobile inspectors, so we had to find other tools that we we're syncing with Site Manager to make it work, like different apps where we have more of a mobile first vision. Are you guys looking at, or have you heard of other states investing in an integration between Site Manager and different apps?
So one of the things that FHWA does provide in order to do the syncing of information to Site Manager, it has, it's called FHWA Sync Service. It would allow you to then sync your information directly in, dependent upon the item naming convention that you would be using, and then order to look at if it's going to sync in or sync to, and how you would work on that. We actually use the mobile inspector. When we went to it, we started with basically 35 individuals the first month. A year later, we're at 387. 60 of them are our consultants. So they're actually seeing a use for that. But then also when you go to the CRL, the Field Interviewer app is going to be coming out with 301. So, and I'm not trying to sell that because I sit on our task force, I'm just trying to give you guys options. We've also heard of, I believe it's Indiana, has created some of their own in-house apps that they're able to sync to their system through a different service. So there are agencies that use FHWA and combine to what they already have, or at apps that they're looking at going towards the future.
Okay, thank you everybody for those questions, and certainly our panelists for the answers. I want to move on quickly back to the maturity matrix that I spoke about earlier in the presentation. Hopefully you had a chance to fill out the loose leaf piece of paper there, both sides, e-construction on one side, partnering on the other. Certainly if you're not the e-construction champion, please take it back and provide it to your champion and send it on to us if you would, please. Have them take a close look at this tool, the self-assessment tool. It kind of gives you a self-assessment of where you are in your e-construction and partnering journey along your roadmap. Use it as often as you like, maybe once a year, to be able to define where you're doing things well, where things you may need to be enhancing. We find it very valuable for that particular aspect. And as Bernie said, he put up there a website. We have been gathering a ton of information out there, and certainly use the FHWA resources that was in Bernie's presentation to access this data and again, help you assess and figure out where you are in your journey with e-construction and partnering. So with that, I would like to move on to the roundtable discussion. And again, this is where we do less of the talking, and we want to hear more from you. And we'll start out with e-construction in terms of what type of activities you've experienced coming out of EDC 3. I know a few of you have participated in peer exchanges here in the room, Caltrans. Has anybody else participated in a peer exchange in e-construction? Are you folks aware of the peer exchanges that are happening out there? Yes. Yes.
Do you want anyone to speak about that a little bit, or no?
Well, I'm looking for feedback in terms, is this something that you as an agency would like to continue experiencing? Maybe from Caltrans' perspective, Rachel or John, can you tell them about your experience and the benefits you got out of it?
Hi, I'm John Hancock with Caltrans, and last year we actually did get to participate. Caltrans was part of a peer exchange with Michigan DOT, and Michigan's one of the lead states for e-construction. And I felt that we went there to really see what innovations that they had implemented and really learn from them. But I think one of the things that we got out of it is we got to see some things more than just e-construction by actually going to Michigan and having them step us through their construction process in general. We got to learn a lot about other states and the challenges that they face and how they implement e-construction. And I think the same thing, we were able to provide some of the stuff that Caltrans, even though we felt that we were relatively new to e-construction, I think that we brought some insight to the way we do business that they could think about some of their business practices and how maybe streamline some of their business practices. So I felt that the couple days that we spent with them and setting up an agenda that covered all aspects of construction was very valuable to both Caltrans for the stuff that we brought back, and I think it was valuable to Michigan for some of the things that we imparted to them.
Mm-hmm. John makes a great point here, is that, they thought they were going in, being the exploring state, but the reality is it validates how far along they were in the construction journey, and both states benefited from the exchange. And we're seeing that more and more in these types of exchanges. So Colorado was part of an exchange with Missouri. And Lexmi, do you have any comments with regard to?
That we didn't even think about when we went in was the bidding aspect. So we have electronic bidding, but we don't currently provide like the DWG files and all of it. And MoDOT has this kind of like a planetarium, that's what I call it, for everything. And it was really cool. It's something that we didn't even think about. And at the end, we ended up thinking a lot more of it. And also, we got the e-ticketing out of it as well. And we are piloting e-ticketing on concrete. Asphalt kind of went through, didn't really work out there.
That's great.
But something we learned.
That's great, thank you. So obviously, from the two states that experience peer exchanges, there's a lot of value in this from a two-way exchange here. So other states that haven't experienced, is it something that you would like to possibly, either volunteer as a exploring state, a lead state, or participate as an exploring state? Any interest from the crowd? I know Nevada is very interested and is in the queue to participate here, hopefully in the next month or so. But any other states?
I'll bet.
Oh, okay.
Anybody interested in showing us what they got?
Sure, raise the hands. We'll hook you up. I liken this to an e-dating system. But other ideas. We do virtual exchanges also in EDC3. We've had one where Florida has done an hour or 2 hour virtual exchange with Maine on digital signatures. We're exploring some others that we're going to be doing on a virtual exchange. So if there's a specific topic that maybe is keeping you up at night or making you anxious, we could get you associated with a virtual peer exchange, so you don't have to spend 2 days talking about it. You can spend just an hour. Anything else out of EDC 3? Yes.
The webinars.
Yeah. Yes.
Have people been taking a look at the webinars for e-construction, and what do you think of it? And I'm being very specific because we're facilitating the webinars, and we like more input to see if that is a valuable tool for you guys. If you take a look at the upcoming webinars, the next one is in January, Prioritize in E-Construction Investments. We have on the lineup PennDOT to talk about that, so you may be interested in registering for that. And we are looking for speakers for webinars 7 and 8. So if you would like to tell your story, we'd love to hear from you.
Great. Another very memorable outcome of EDC3, as she mentioned, these webinars. So maybe let's move on to what we're all here to do is come up with new ideas. And any innovative ideas or thoughts about e-construction that maybe we haven't done? We've done the webinars, we did the workshops, we're doing the peer exchanges, the virtual peer exchanges. Any other ideas from the crowd? Any thoughts come to mind?
I'm Kathy Kroll. I'm with the New Mexico Department of Transportation. And kind of in line with what you're asking about, but another just overarching thing that we all need to think about. I'm hearing a lot that we're all having trouble with retention and with recruiting. And one of the things we talked about, that was talked about previously, was issues with engaging the millennials. Well, one of the things that's really important to the millennials is technology and collaboration. So this
Absolutely.
isn't just about the efficiencies of construction. This is also about engaging that next generation. So when we start to think about what the benefits are of this, we need to add that to the thought process. So just putting that out there.
So your suggestion is maybe having some type of public outreach that would attract that generation of employees? And right now, I can tell you they expect it. If you're not going to provide it, they're probably not going to come work for you. They're going to go work for somebody else that will give them that type of technology that they desire and expect. So excellent comment.
And on top of that is it's just building practices that they will use and procedures, and that instead of just ignoring paper, they will use these things and therefore expand the use and expand the need for it.
And if you give them the reins, they'll create.
They'll run them.
Right, to that point, what we're seeing in these peer exchanges, states giving the reins to the field inspectors, the ones that are bringing their own devices because they feel the need and can see the efficiency of it, and they're given that free rein to go out and look for the apps to an extent, within certain guidelines, but it's working. It's a very real situation we have there. I'm going to move on to partnering here, and I think I saw a lot of head nodding and understanding how these two topics come together and how they complement each other and the synergies between the two. And you heard from basically two states here about where they are in their partnering journey. But what do you view as partnering in the future? And certainly what type of activities do you think we should be looking at to help you figure out how to move forward with your partnering initiatives?
So this ties back to the last question, partnering and who we're reaching out to. Are we reaching out to other industries, or are we just looking down the construction pipeline? Because, I mean, the last two refinances I didn't go into the office. It was all e-signatures. I mean, the technology is out there. It's simple to use. It's readily available. Are we capturing that, across the spectrum and not just looking at what are other states doing in e-construction?
For instance, in Portland, where we just came from a similar summit, a gentleman from the Corps of Engineers, expressed his partnering concept. So that's what you're talking about, reaching out to the other industries and how they're utilizing the partnering concepts. That's a good suggestion. So that something like that would be, we've heard in other summits, case studies, not only from how a particular state is transforming their partnering philosophies and policies, but also how they're implementing them and what successes and possibly failures they're seeing in those. Would case studies be of something of interest to the group? I'm seeing some head nodding. And certainly, from that perspective, we would need to be reaching out to some of the states to provide that data. What are some of the barriers in your states with regard to partnering? Is it something that is fully supported by management? I'm seeing some head waving out there. But it's something that's changing. I think we all agree. And our workforce is changing. A lot of states haven't had updated policies since the 90s. But we know partnering exists, partnering is necessary, and certainly it's something that's worthwhile to reduce claims and keep the industry moving forward. So, question? Or
Sharon
comment?
Forschler with Nevada Department of Transportation. I would say one of the biggest barriers from Nevada's perspective is losing momentum. So although it's our way of doing business, it doesn't seem like there's any more tools in the toolbox other than what we initially learned. So kind of reinvigorating the program. I'm going to do a little marketing spiel here. Nevada, in coordination with FHWA, is hosting a national partnering conference in April. I have some flyers I'll pass out to everybody. And we're working together to try to see kind of what the trends are and where we need to go with the program. We initially did a survey across all the states to see what they were doing with their partnering, and it came back fairly flat. So I think nationwide, just from what we've seen to date, I think a lot of states, although it's their way of doing business, there's nothing new and innovative about it. So I would say that's probably one of the biggest barriers that we're seeing.
And do you agree e-construction is possibly changing the way we're doing it?
Yes, I think it's enhancing our business practices. It's streamlining it. And I think maybe you're seeing less rubbing elbows over issues because you're expediting the resolution of those issues, which is a good thing, but one thing suffers when something else takes off oftentimes.
Is e-construction on your agenda?
Absolutely.
Oh, great.
We're somewhat implemented. We have FHWA for our contract documentation and contractor pay, inspector reports, daily diaries.
Excellent.
We're on the queue with our budget to move forward with the materials module, and hoping, we're kind of like Caltrans, we learned from other agencies not to bite off too big of a piece, so we started off with just the documentation and contractor pay portion. We're having some issues with our state budget office right now, not seeing the value in going e-construction, which is rather frustrating. But our department supports it. It's at the state level.
And what would you think would change their mind? Just the Turner Fairbanks RI report that's going to be coming out?
That would definitely help, definitely.
Okay.
You know, there's not hard numbers that we can put around what the savings are. And we're already implemented to a point, but with the AASHTO where it's going web-based, getting away from the server-based, so we're going to be forced in the future to make that progression. Otherwise, what we have is going to be dead in the water. We have implemented iPads to all of our field crews, fully functioning with mobile inspector, a lot of great success, but my fear is that we're going to lose steam if we don't get the budget approval. So it's just kind of a state issue.
Great comments. When is the conference?
It's April 4th through the 6th in Reno, Nevada, and if you don't mind, I'll
Please
pass
do.
these out. And then I'll have some more over in the main room for everybody else.
Okay, well, we're about at the end of our session here, and I thank you for your patience and your input, and we are documenting those suggestions, and again, we're going to be putting them into our implementation plan that will be posted probably mid to late first quarter next year, similar to what we did in EDC 3. Here are some contacts here for both on the e-construction and the partnering side. We have John Haynes. I want to introduce John. John, if you want to raise your hand, from the Federal Highway Utah Division here. Resource to you in this particular region, and certainly Bernie's up there. And again, I want to thank you for all your input, and I hope you got something out of this session for e-construction and partnering and helping us move forward with our vision for the future. So thank you very much.